So a funny story, one of my friends who has an S2K, I've mentioned him in my videos before. After the first few months of owning his S2000, the engine, unfortunately, it blew up. And I mean, of course, the S2K was never perfect before that. He always had a few issues with it. And not just that, obviously it's a two-seater, so it's not the most practical car in the world. So he bought himself a Civic Type R, which, I mean, why wouldn't you? And obviously the main reason for this was just so he had a practical daily driver that wasn't always blowing up. Yeah, I think you can see where I'm going with this. But yeah, basically, after a while of owning the Civic, he started doing a few modifications here and there, and eventually he made it into a track build. But don't get me wrong, it is really fun. I was lucky enough to actually drive this car, and honestly, I love Civics, and Type Rs especially. They're such great cars. But obviously now, the car that was meant to be a daily is a track car, and it doesn't even have back seats anymore. So, but like, I just thought this was a joke. Like, I didn't actually know people bought project cars and then bought a daily that turned into another project car. Like, I thought this was just a joke, but I've seen it happen now. And to be completely honest with you, I don't blame people for doing this, because I've almost fell into this trap before. I mean, I've got an MX-5, and obviously they're not the most practical cars in the world, and my one it's quite loud, so it's not the best car for daily use. So at the moment, I am looking into getting a daily driver, but the daily drivers I'm looking at getting aren't daily drivers. And it's not even that, right? Like, some of the cars I'm looking at, for example, the Lexus IS200, but that's still an old car, and also, like, I just know I'm going to modify it in some way or the other. But I feel like just most car guys, they don't want to get just a normal everyday daily. Like, they want to get interesting cars, or cars that are a bit more fun, which I guess is why cars like the Type R and the Golf GTI are so good, because they basically tick every box. But even then, I just know most of us will just do mods to them that will make them not the best to daily. But it's just that endless cycle of buying a car that's meant to be a project, and then buying a daily that turns into a project, and then buying another car that's meant to be a daily that turns into a project. It's just an endless cycle. It'll be interesting to know if anyone else has done this though, so do let me know in the comments. But I'm a big fan of it. I think it's funny. Now, something that isn't as funny and is a little bit more serious, but I definitely wouldn't recommend doing this, is financing a car, or financing two cars, or even worse, financing mods. I think the best advice someone's given me is, if you can't afford it, probably not the best idea to buy it, especially when it's multiple cars and multiple mods. Now, don't get me wrong, some big payments like cars and houses, it is okay to finance, especially if the interest rate isn't too bad. But if you're trying to pay off one car and then you go and buy another car, I don't think this is always the best idea, especially if you're buying mods for that car that you also can't afford. Of course, people can do what they want with their own money. Like, I'm not going to say that they can't do this or they can do this, but it's just not the smartest idea in the world, especially with something like a hobby, because cars are really expensive. And like, different car manufacturers or different dealerships have ways of making it seem a lot cheaper than it actually is. And you're like, oh, it's only $900/pounds a month. Like, that's not too bad. But then when you add on the interest rate, the overall price is actually a lot more. So just be careful when you do go to do this, but please don't finance multiple cars, or especially not mods. So this next one is a bit of a controversial one, because I know some people are super opinionated about this, and I mean, I just know every single car guy has done this. Like, it's one of the things where sometimes you just have to do it, and I'm talking about doing car guy things in areas that aren't really the best or the most appropriate to do it. The thing is, right, as a car enthusiast, of course your hobby is cars, but not everyone else wants to see that hobby. However, sometimes if you're going through a tunnel, or you're going through a city and there's tall buildings around you, it's nice to hear your car sometimes. I'm just saying, it's sometimes nice just to hear the engine a little bit. But at the same time, it can be seen as quite obnoxious, which I totally understand. And it's one thing that I mentioned on a previous video about having a loud exhaust, and about someone complaining about it in a car park. And a lot of people in the comments had really fair points, and it sort of made me look at it in a different way now. Not everyone wants to see your hobby, not everyone wants to hear a loud car. Like, it does add to noise pollution, as boring as it sounds. But at the same time, sometimes you just want to enjoy yourself, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what I will say is, there's always a time and a place for enjoying your car. Like, if you want to drive your car hard, then you can take it to the back roads, or you can take it for a track day. It's not always great to do it through a populated area, because it can be dangerous dangerous as well. But mainly you're just going to be annoying and upsetting people, which isn't always the best look for car enthusiasts. But if you're going through a tunnel at night, I mean, sometimes you just have to enjoy yourself, you know, every now and then it's okay. The next thing to talk about is a bit of a weird one, because I think a lot of people do this once in their life, but it's not the worst thing to do in the world. And it's getting a car that's a bit of an impulse buy, you know, a bit of a project car that you see on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist, wherever you live, and you think, you know what, I can take that on. And I mean, you could even go and see it in person, take it for a test drive, it's perfect. And as soon as you drive it home, you just have issue after issue after issue. Or I mean, even worse, you could just see the car online being advertised, pay the deposit, and then when you go to pick it up, you realise the volume of the mistake you've just made. I think it's safe to say most car enthusiasts will spend so much time looking through things like Auto Trader, Facebook Marketplace, just at used cars they can buy. But I mean, you know, buying a used car is a gamble, but if you don't see the car in person first, it's even more of a gamble. I've got an MBM X5 that I bought off Facebook Marketplace, which I got for a pretty good deal, and the car is actually really good. But I mean, there's been so many other cars that I've been tempted to buy that you know, they're on Facebook Marketplace, they're really cheap. There's a few little things you might need doing to them, but it's just too good of a deal. I saw an old Mark 1 MR2 on there the other day, like an old school AW11, and it was for like 2k, like it was quite a cheap MR2. And exterior wise, like it looked fine, right? And then I was swiping along the pictures, and basically they showed a part of underneath and it was just all completely rusted. It does go to show though, like before, the car looked completely perfect, but after a little bit of further inspection, there was so much rust. The issue is though, like a lot of sellers won't show you this information. They won't, you know, they won't have pictures of the problems, or they won't tell you the issues down in the description. So as tempting as it is to impulse buy, like even when you go to see a car, like it could all seem fine, and then when you drive it home, when you have it after a week, you realise the amount of issues it has. So be careful, especially when buying old sports cars from like the 90s or 80s. It's just, you never know what you're going to buy. But even with my MX-5, it had quite a bad misfiring issue, which we managed to sort out, but on the test drive when it was warmed up, it was completely fine. And it's just one of the things where it's kind of interesting, because, you know, a car can seem perfect, and then after a week of owning it, you start realizing its issues, and they're issues that the previous owners obviously hid. So yeah, just be careful with impulse buys. Don't get anything immediately. Just have a good look at it first, and especially don't buy anything without seeing it. But like I say in most videos, it is your own money, so you can do what you want with it. It'll be interesting to know in the comments though what sort of dumb car guy things you've seen us do. I mean, there's quite a lot. I probably could make a part 2. But if you did find some enjoyment in this video, I mean, feel free to hit the subscribe button. It's free, so you might as well. And I make car content all the time, so feel free to check out these 2 videos here, and I will see you in the next one. Ciao for now.